Welcome to another episode of the Online Prosperity Experience podcast. You're about to hear your host, Prosper Taravinga's powerful digital marketing strategies and actionable tactics that you can use right now. Prosper has helped more than 50,000 people from over 10 countries to create meaningful businesses that are profitable and enjoyable. Listen to this podcast so that you too can build your own business with less stress and overwhelm. Let's get started.
Here's the secret to mastering the art of taking criticism. Yep, you heard it right. You actually have to have, it is a skill actually, to take on criticism. You see, we are always creating content out there. We're always trying to relate to an audience as coaches and consultants and, small to medium businesses. We have to put content out there. You know why? Because, people are always coming to the internet to get information. And if we're the producers of that content, then we create that know, like, and trust factor. But guess what? Half of the time we have a lot of people, if you're a comedian, they call them hecklers. You spit out a really good joke, and then somebody in the audience goes, "Oh, boo," or just boos you off stage, or just tries to correct you, in front of everybody else. And then the natural response is for us to retaliate or to want to defend ourselves. And before we know it, we're already going down that rabbit hole where, people no longer take us for our own credibility, but they take us as somebody that just wants to cause fights on the internet. At the end of the day, you are out there in the public space. There's going to be haters. There's going to be people that are not, even your own audience. There's going to be people that just hate seeing you becoming successful. And then there's going to be you showing them how it's done. There's going to be you showing up every single day without betting an eyelid. And I think it was Winston Churchill that mentioned that criticism may not be agreeable. I mean, we're human, you know what I mean? You can't just agree to anybody else who's confronting you. It's like we raise up that reptilian voice or mindset, which obviously gets us to get into fight or flight mode. But obviously with this cancel culture that we now have nowadays, there's no way you can go and pull people up by the collar and tell them, "Hey, you, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about." So like I was saying, Winston Churchill says criticism may not be agreeable, but it's necessary. If you've noticed in the culture we have right now, we are meant to pick a side. Okay, either you're with Russia or you're with Ukraine. Either you are a vaxxer or an anti-vaxxer. Either you're with Vladin or I don't know what the other guy's name is. And I'm sorry, I just have to think of these things on the spot. Okay, either you're Will Smith or you're Chris Rock. So criticism may not be agreeable, but it's necessary. It fulfills the same function as the pain in the human body. And when you have pain in the human body, what do? You seek some remedy for it. Okay, nobody sits when their foot is broken and you can see the bone sticking out of your your skin. All right. So when you find or come across criticism, it should actually be welcomed. You know why? Because it's a sign that you're making a difference, either in the right direction or in the wrong direction. So it is then up to you to decide what that criticism represents to you. And still on Winston Churchill's quote, it says it calls attention to an unhealthy state of things. When somebody criticizes you, either they're not the right kind of client with the right kind of pain, or your offer does not quite sit well with people. So you want to lean in to that criticism and really find out how you can help people by actually helping them. I can understand as a small to medium business or as a coach or consultant, cold calling potential clients and having them hang up in your face hurts. Right. You know, you don't want people telling you no, or you don't want people rejecting you. And it just is one of those things that we have to encounter or face once in a while as an entrepreneur: rejection. And that's the same thing where you present your ideas or you present a podcast like this, and then people start nitpicking and criticizing every single thing that you've put out there, or you go on video and people start judging on what you're wearing or how you say words. Okay, so for people like myself, English is not my first language. And so I'm bound to be criticized about how I express certain things, or how I don't have, the lingo or the culture aspect, or maybe, just an innate understanding of, how people, in a certain area work or present themselves. So dealing with criticism is one of the most important skills that you have to develop if you want to be successful in business, if you want to be successful as a blogger, if you want to have a successful podcast, or if you just want to have success in life in general. Because at the end of the day, right now, you might be sending out hundreds of emails without even anyone reaching out and saying, hey, thank you so much for the value that you're putting out there. You might be putting out a podcast every single day, right? And even risking communicating with your actual audience or with your actual clients just so that you put content out there and nobody takes any notice of what you're doing, and all they do is maybe sit down on their computers and become keyboard warriors while criticizing the work that you're doing. So it is a skill that you actually have to have thick skin. All right, because there will be people that are going to doubt you. There will be people that will criticize you. And then there will be you showing them how you've actually succeeded. And I used to get really hurt and instantly defend myself if I received any type of maybe hateful email, or somebody says a post on my, or, a comment on my social media post and things like that. And in the beginning of my podcasting days, this was common space. People would say, your audio quality is not the best. The links in your podcast are not working, because I hadn't created an ecosystem that would help me, channel all this criticism, or show them that I'm working towards something great. Now, I don't even care what people say. This podcast is for free. If you feel like you're not getting the value that you want, write me an email and I'll send you your money back that you paid to subscribe to this podcast. You see, you didn't pay nothing. So what do you expect, top class quality if you haven't actually paid anything? So I used to really, get hurt, and I would sit down and start crying whenever somebody would send me an email saying, you're probably just regurgitating what everybody else is saying. And I'm like, show me what you have created. Show me your content, and then I can then put it against what we're creating. And then I go and see those people's profiles. They've got nothing, not even a profile picture, not even anything to show who they are or why I should even care to even talk about them on my podcast right now. So like I said, I used to instantly, really get hurt because I'm trying. English is not my first language. I don't know if you know anything about my story, but, and the biggest reason why I actually love and I'm passionate about helping coaches, consultants, and small business owners is because I know what it's like to come from nothing. Each and every one of us is trying to grow a business so that it's profitable, and you're starting from zero. You're starting from no connections. You're starting from no credibility. You're starting from just about nothing. You see, I was born in a small town in Zimbabwe in Africa. You should look that up and see how small it is. The country town is called Chivu. Only 10 years ago did they have the first traffic light in the city. One traffic light in the whole city, and it's taken them all this while. Wow. People had cell phones before there was traffic lights in the city. You know what I mean? So growing up for me, life was pretty tough. We didn't even have any money or any hope that I would amount to anything. And, there was no one to look up to because we didn't have any role models, and no one could inspire us to want more, be more, and have more. But my life changed when a bright-eyed Australian teacher came and started working at my school. And she taught me mathematics at that time. And she was teaching me all about Australia and all the incredible opportunities that Australia had to offer. Now, you can imagine, I'm a teenager and I'm trying to look for what to do with my life and all those horizons. I'm very impressionable. And it was so timely that this teacher came around and she showed me a world of infinite possibility and showed me that if you're willing to work and dream big and the courage to follow your dreams, man, nothing can stop you. Now, you can imagine, I'm coming in from a place like that. I don't know nothing about traffic lights. I don't know anything about courtesy or anything else. And I just worked my butt off to get to where I am right now. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my story right there. So that's why I'm saying it used to really hurt, and I used to instantly defend myself when I used to receive any hate mail or people trying to heckle me on my podcast or whatever it is that I was doing. I remember being crushed every single time I read one, or I'd talk to my wife and I'd be like, should I keep doing this? I put so much thought, heart, and research into what I was doing, and yet there I was enraging people. You know what I mean? And looking back now, I now feel that those people had a point. Even though they could not have conveyed their message in a nicer manner, you know what I mean? Because they're crushing somebody's dreams who came from nothing, all right? And I've found that it's actually better to have people that criticize you both personally and in your career, so that you actually know you are headed to the right direction. Because people will only criticize you if you stand for something or if you're working towards something. Nobody will come and criticize you for sleeping, bruh. Do you know what I mean? So back in the time, I used to get hurt, but now looking back and like what Steve Jobs says, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. To take criticism in was the best thing that I did before I dismissed it or started feeling sorry for myself, and then I stopped producing. I did not do any of that. I wish it didn't take me years to learn, but I finally developed in a few ways, within myself. Obviously, I already have a thick skin. I came from zero, so the only way is up, and even really all the harsh criticism or the racism that I would have faced, I actually took that and I used it to my advantage. Because everywhere I've ever been to and everywhere I've ever gone to, I try and find out who are the highest ranking people within that niche, within that area, and those are the only people I care about. Everybody else, they can go and themselves. All right. So this is how I got about it. I first of all obviously wanted to learn about the culture, about the ins and outs of how everything else happens in Australia. When I came here, I didn't even know how the tax system worked. I didn't even know how driving worked. I had to learn all of those things. And you can imagine, obviously, some people would expect that somebody who's 28 might know a thing or two about paying their bills on time or paying their phone bill on time or things of that nature. I never had any of that. Gosh, I told you, we did not have a traffic light until 10 years ago. And that's when I was already in Australia. So in my collective memory, I never had a traffic light in my city. But this is what I did. I listened to all the criticism. Because obviously I was stepping on people's grounds. I didn't try and start from the bottom. I shoot straight to the top. I went in for the A-listers. Those are the people that I was interviewing at that time. Those were the people that I was seeing around. And so obviously people will start wondering, who is this kid? Who is this guy? Who is this, person we never saw growing up? And guess what? Obviously the criticism will come around there. Because it's systematic. It's just how human beings are designed to function. All right? What we don't understand, we try and bash. What we don't understand, we try and ridicule, just so that we minify its importance to us. Because we always think things that we don't understand or things that we cannot recognize is a threat. So this is what I was doing. I started listening to this criticism. And the most important and hardest part about being criticized is to actually listen to the other person without interrupting. All right? And it's natural for you to immediately want to defend yourself or whatever actions you just took, but wait it out. Just wait out that person. The more they're talking, the more you actually are learning. Because I think it was Buddha that said we learn a lot more by listening than by talking. So criticism might be hard to hear because obviously we have an ego and we never want our ego to be bruised. That's one thing we're always protecting. But the other person is just trying to tell you something they feel passionate about. They might be looking at the world from their own lenses. All right. So if somebody's wearing rose tinted glasses, everything they look at is rose colored. If somebody is wearing dark tinted glasses, everything they look at is dark. If somebody's wearing blue tinted glasses, everything they look at has a hue of blue somewhere there. So just hear out what they have to say, because you can't see what they can see. And they might be giving you another perspective, or you might build upon what they're saying, or maybe just take on that criticism, and work with it. Hear what they have to say in its entirety before you start talking back, because they won't then finish because they're afraid maybe they're offending you. And talking about offense, there's one thing that you need to be obviously aware of. If you are going to be on social media, you are in somebody's space. I want to give you a specific example. Everybody that's showing up on social media right now, or somebody, if you're looking at things on social media, 9 times out of 10, you're probably sitting in your own house, or you are sitting on the toilet, or you are in the privacy of your own home. Now, the fact that I have entered your house, I have entered your brain right now, the most intimate of your possessions, I have entered your phone, I'm living in there. You know what I mean? That means I have to respect showing up in your space. You might be sitting on the toilet right now. I'm sorry. I entered your space. So if you criticize me, I have to be open to that so that I don't repeat the same mistake over and over and again. And you all know something? Mistakes are really expensive. So be open to criticism, especially you are in the public eye. Because when you're criticized, don't shut down or let the flow of words wash over you. Instead, try to be as open as possible to what that critic is saying. Sometimes it takes a while to realize that the criticism wasn't far off base, because normally people just don't show up and say stuff. I mean, it's predicated on their own belief system. And if you can understand what their belief system is, then you know not to cross that belief system in the future. And it creates a precedent for stuff that you can look out for in the future. Just consider the nuggets of truth that are coming from that person. The way the person is expressing maybe that criticism may be awful because obviously they are not trained to be empathetic or to have some sort of IQ, but they may have some valid point that serve their communication from being a complete waste. All right? When somebody decides to say something, they have some sort of passion around it and they just want to express that passion to you. And in essence, you can learn sales techniques because that person, you interrupted their pattern enough to actually warrant them to want to, criticize you or say something or react. So find out what made them react. And if it's something that you can use to your advantage, voila. Instead of you protecting yourself and getting into your own cocoon, some people might not end up telling you other things that might actually change the course of your life. Because you can imagine, a lot of people have faced a lot of rejection. Yesterday, I was watching Elon Musk trying to send, rockets up to space. Did you know it took them almost 10 years to get the first one to actually at least land? Can you imagine how many failures they were going through all the time? And there's videos of him crying and everything else. But he just gets up, looks at what mistake they did because they took out, each false landing, they took it as a lesson. And they were learning from that. Yes, that's criticism from the nature and the laws of physics or whatever it is. And criticism from all the people that were watching that don't even know how to charge their own phones. But they were still criticizing. Don't criticize me for not knowing how to say criticizing. So, at the end of the day, be open to it. And the more you're open to criticism, some of it can be constructive And people might know a thing or two that you might not know, and it shortens your learning curve. So if you've got an open mind, you are open, to get feedback from people. Don't look at it as criticism. Look at it as feedback. Like right now, I don't know what time you're going to be listening to this. I don't know what time you're going to be listening to this podcast, but we're going through a time where in Australia there's about to be elections. And one guy from the opposition, he just made a mistake about figures on employment. And now all the media, everybody else is running on him, saying he's incompetent. He can't run a country just because he doesn't know that the employment rate is either 5% or whatever it is. I think he should take this to his advantage, but I don't think he's that smart. I remember at the time when, Ford, Ford was being asked by, a jury of his peers, and they were saying he's not a very smart person. And he said, I don't need to know all this information. I have people in my employ that find this information for me. I don't need to know, this information for myself. So you need to be in a position to actually discuss criticism. The more questions you ask your critic, the more clarifications you can actually get. So this opposition leader might just say, tell me, where am I going to use this information, and why is it so important that I know information that's always fluctuating? I haven't done anything to increase the employment rate, all right? I haven't done it, so how would I know what the actual rate is? Because that fluctuates. So you need to ask more questions from your critic instead of just retreating into your shell like a turtle. Because the more clear you are on what the other person is demanding of you, then the more clearer your message becomes to them. And it's important to realize that sometimes people just like to criticize others just because. And if they find, a weak point, then they just want to keep, turning the knife for no reason. But there's also other people that mean well. And it's more often than not, because that's what's called constructive criticism. So your blog post, your podcast, all your information out there, it might be, you might be trying to put yourself out there, find your voice, or, find your feet, or whatever you call it these days. There's got to be somebody who is going to try and bring you down. And if you're not strong enough, or if you don't have thick skin, or, just the wherewithal to ask for this criticism, or to be open-minded, or to even discuss with the person why they have come to that conclusion, it will bring you down. And guess what happens? Everybody always wants to bring you down, and they'll beat you with experience because they've been there all the while. And then pretty much after you are met, they go on to the next victim. So why have you wasted that time, money, and effort, and even those feelings trying to retaliate with people that don't even care what your next move is going to be? So this is why I actually ask you to go out there and actually ask for criticism. Show up. Post that post before you even check it. Yes, obviously spelling mistakes and stuff like that, some of these things are non-negotiable, but just don't not stop yourself from progressing just because you're afraid that Sally from accounting is probably going to fact check your post or something of that nature. You can go out and actually ask for that criticism. The next time somebody criticizes you, put out a post and then go to them and say, hey, I want you to edit this for me. I want you to tell me if this goes along with your own standards. And then that would teach them, because now they have work to do. They can actually see how much work you've put in to create something that is of meaning to other people, instead of them just being a keyboard warrior, or a touchscreen warrior, or whatever they call themselves these days. So go out and actually ask for it. And once you've gotten really good at dealing with criticism, asking for it can be a very useful way to bring your work to the next level. Because the more regularly you ask maybe your trusted mentors or those critics themselves or other colleagues for their honest opinion, the better the chances that you actually improve your skills. Because every time somebody thinks something does not resonate well with them, it's not meant for them. Just teach them to notice things that are meant for them, not to just jump onto everything. Because a lot of people on the internet or on social media feel like they're entitled just because they've seen something come through their news feed. They're entitled to an opinion. Of course, yeah, you can say what you want to say, but if your opinion is not warranted, and if you can stand up for the content that you're putting out there, then you actually win all these internet wars. All right, you don't have to aggressively fight people when they criticize your work or anything like that, because if we're not being checked, then obviously the whole industry would be filled up with stuff that is not good for us. And once you've received that criticism, I want to encourage you to actually act on it. I know and I understand this is by far the hardest thing to do, because when you take criticism well, right, and then you actually dissect it and then deconstruct it and see the good for the good and the chaff for the chaff, you will actually start creating. You become unstoppable. You know why? Because that person who's given you unwarranted criticism, you could have paid for a professional to give you that kind of criticism, and guess what? You would have been broke and been disheartened. But now you've just been given free advice or free, reinforcement. Because people will only react to things that have actually touched them. So you have already won half the battle. You have already gotten somebody who is super lazy, who is ignorant, and who is, uneducated to act. The government can't even do that kind of thing. So pat yourself in the back and act on that criticism. Because taking criticism well is valuable. But this isn't the end of the story. Because after you've considered that the critic, might have a point, or what they've shared, or maybe you've realized that there's some truth to it, it's time for you to implement those suggestions. Implement immediately, and then go back to that critic and say, hey, look at what I did with your unsolicited criticism. Thank you. Do you want to leave me a review? Now they feel like they're part of the creation process. And that's science, my friends. Because change and growth is a habit. The more you're changing, the more you are growing, the more you actually start attracting the right kind of people with the right kind of pain, with the right kind of product, based on those same critics that think they're keyboard warriors. They're actually helping you. So you go there and act on that. Because if you simply absorb criticism without acting on it, the entire process of listening was for nothing. You just got insulted. And maybe you deserve that insult if you're not going to act on whatever criticism is coming your way. And you can go and sit in the corner and wallow up until everybody likes you. And if you want people to like you, go and make pizza. And even pizza has 500 different flavors. And speaking of which, can you put pineapple on a pizza? I don't know. I only came across that in Australia. And beetroot on a pizza. And I've also seen a pizza with dim sims. Anyway, I'm just now getting distracted about pizzas. So, like I said, if you simply absorb any criticism without acting on it, that whole entire process was worth nothing. And for the extra credit, just thank your critics for taking the time to let you know what they think. Because yours is the highest road. When you acknowledge somebody who has gone out of their way to tell you something might be wrong, or maybe, I'm yelling too much on this podcast or whatever it is, I'll take heed of that. And you know what I'll do? I'll lower the volume on the podcast and just make sure that I deliver value consistently. All right? So thank the people that are in your life for giving you this free advice that you could have paid for to some sort of an expert. All right? So tell me, how are you dealing, with criticism in your industry? Because it's difficult, and if you're not being criticized in your industry, then that means you're not, ruffling any feathers. Then that means you're not making any difference. Because like I said at the start, Winston Churchill actually said, criticism may not be agreeable, but it is necessary. And it fulfills the same function as as the pain in a human body. And we all know that when you have pain in a human body, we're going to do everything we can to get rid of that pain. And it calls attention to an unhealthy state of things. So if you listen to that criticism and you act on it, and then you literally go in, and maybe you could also find the validity of the person who's talking to you, and then ask a few other things. Where are they getting their information from? All of that stuff. Before you just get angry and stop doing anything. Like I said, listen to that criticism, be open to it, and don't take criticism personally. Because sometimes people criticize just because they don't like you, or they're bored, or have their own issues. But when somebody genuinely criticizes your work, you should try to push your ego to the side. Remember that you and your work are entirely separate entities. You are not your work. Yes, you might be putting out consulting, training, information, expertise, or whatever paid speaking gigs you might be doing out there. But when it comes to your work, try to be as objective as possible and detach your self-worth from what you're doing, because you could change that career tomorrow, or you could be in a position not to be able to fulfill that role. What are you going to do with yourself after that? All right. So at the end of the day, discuss that criticism that comes in, ask for more, and then act on that criticism. You know why? Because those people are actually giving you free advice that you could have paid for. All right. I want you to win. Yes, you're going to be criticized because you're changing lives and you're making a difference. And the people that might be criticizing you are bored and maybe have their own issues. I want you to go out there and create for and relate to the people you're going to be demanding money off of. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, let's continue the conversation in the Live Long Digital community. Become a Live Long Digital community member today. This community is for ambitious entrepreneurs and small business owners with the drive to take control of the future of their businesses and achieve huge success without stress and overwhelm. As you heard, Prosper can help you by teaching you marketing strategies that work. So look no further than the Live Long Digital community of entrepreneurs and highly successful business owners. Join our community today. Find us on www.community.livelongdigital.com.au. Network with other driven entrepreneurs and find the expert guidance you need to take your business to the next level. www.community.livelongdigital.com.au